This is the third and final part of Yesterday with Tom. If you want to see the story, you can look here. And if you want to see the story with questions, you can go to this link. But today we'll be looking at chunks from the story. The story is pretty short. So there's only 258 words in the story. But have a look at this. This is just from the first part of the story. Look at all the chunks that are in the story. Quite impressive, yes? And it's not only this story, it's virtually any piece of English that you come across. So if you hear a conversation, there will be chunks in it. If you watch someone else's video about history, about biology, there will be chunks of English in there. Therefore, these chunks are very useful to learn, and it will help you sound more natural and more fluent. So let's get started with some grammar chunks from the story. So you can look at the text. Here are some grammar chunks highlighted. Okay, I got 3 grammar chunks that they're very similar. So he didn't, he still didn't, and he still didn't want to. So they can all be chunks, and they're all followed by a type 1 action. Go, eat, drink, take, sleep, whatever. Okay, so he didn't, and you add a type 1 afterwards. So here are some examples. He didn't sleep well last night. He didn't drive his car yesterday. He didn't read a book. For you to get used to this, remember to use the contraction didn't, he didn't. Just think about a male, a man, a boy that you know, and think about 2 or 3 things he didn't do yesterday. And remember, you add a type 1, not a type 2 after it. Okay, he still didn't. How is this different to he didn't? He still didn't. So there was some maybe extra information that made it more likely that he would do it. So for example, he drank some coffee, but he still didn't go for a run. So drinking that coffee made it more likely, but he still didn't do it. He sat at his desk for 2 hours, but he still didn't finish the report. Even though it was more likely that he would do whatever he needed to do, he still didn't do it. Okay, and he still didn't want to. So this maybe indicates that he did it, but there was some resistance. We can go back to the previous example, like he drank some coffee, but he still didn't want to go for a run. Eventually, he went for a run. How much did he? And after this, you will have a type 1 verb. So usually just a single word as a verb. So how much did he eat? How much did he spend? How much did he earn? How much did he sleep? So it could be anything like that. You don't usually get an action after this. So like, for instance, how much did he drink coffee? It sounds very strange. We would rearrange the question to how much coffee did he drink? How much did he sleep well? How well did he sleep? The last 2 grammar chunks that I'm going to focus on are despite and despite not. Despite, it can take a type 4 or a noun after it. So here we got some examples. Despite the rain, we went for a long walk. Despite raining, we went for a long walk. So in both cases, it's a noun. So the type 4 can be a noun. And in the second example, despite the wait, the concert was worth watching. Or like I said, despite waiting for 1 hour, the concert was worth watching. So with despite, it's important that you have a contrast. So despite the rain, you say it's a negative, and then we went for a walk. Oh, we went for a long walk is a positive. And in the second example, you got that negative despite the wait. The concert was worth watching. Okay? And despite not is slightly different because it's much better to put a type 4 after it, not a noun. It does, I think, despite no rain, if you're going to use a noun. So despite not, you would put a type 4 after it. And here are two examples. So if you want to start using despite or despite not, why not make a couple of examples before you move on with the video? Next, we go to action chunks, and you can see in the text, you can see action chunks and also one time chunk highlighted. So the time chunk is yesterday morning. And this story is based in the past. So most of the action chunks are type 2. But notice there are type 1s and 1 type 4. So the type 1s, they usually come later in the sentence. So he didn't feel well. He drank coffee to try and wake himself up. So the type 1s are later in the sentence. Okay, and the type 4 goes with despite not. Just a quick note. So you got a type 2 at time here, yesterday morning, and you can basically put any type 2 action with a type 2 time. So this was Tom yesterday morning. I could say he drank too much yesterday morning. He drank coffee yesterday morning. He got ready for work yesterday morning. He took the underground yesterday morning. So if you got a type 2 time, you can always put a type 2 action in front of it. Okay, and in this text, you can see there are other types of chunks. So we've got a hangover, a mental note. So these are like noun chunks, and they could come action chunks if you use the verb have a hangover. So that's the common action chunk for a hangover. Make a mental note. So often a lot of action chunks are a verb plus a noun chunk, and they're just put together. Okay, we got some time chunks, but they're not related to the past or the future or in general. So you can use them at any time. So the night before, just to give you some context, if I use it in general, I can say, the night before I travel, I like to go to bed early. An example for the past, the night before my wedding night, I was very nervous. And I can also put it in the future. So the night before the big run, I'm going to bed early. Okay, and we've got two chunks in gray, so that they're called other chunks. Here we got one is luckily, so it's only a one word chunk, but it works a bit like despite, but it's much more positive. You know, the changes are always for the good. So let's compare despite and luckily. Let's compare despite and luckily. So here we got the same situation, same scenario. So despite raining, when we arrived at the park, we were still able to have a picnic because the rain stopped soon after. It was raining when we arrived at the park. Luckily, it stopped soon afterwards, and we were still able to have a picnic. Therefore, luckily, to really emphasize that what happened was good. It's a bit stronger than despite. Okay, I hope today's video has showed you that there are chunks literally everywhere in English, and once you start learning in chunks, then you will see more and more chunks. And the important thing about learning in chunks is that it breaks English into usable units, and it helps you with your fluency, and it helps you speak better. Anyway, we will have another story soon.